This is Disclosure Now with Art Quinoa and Brian Zane. A show where we expose the truths that are nefariously hidden from humanity. Today's guest is Chastity Campbell, who talked about her experiences as a Montauk survivor and her journey of becoming a healer. Her story serves as an inspiration to other survivors of trauma-based mind control programming.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Disclosure Now. Welcome. Once again, we're welcoming Chastity Campbell. She is a Montauk survivor turned healer. Brian and I had the pleasure of hanging out with her at the Montauk reunion tour trip. And I remember her from Montauk. We have a few memories. We can maybe talk about that a little bit. But welcome to the show. How are you doing today, Chastity?
Hi, I'm doing good today.
Thanks. Thank you so much for coming on and taking your time to speak with us. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
I guess let's just go right into it. What was your awakening process like, and what was it that when was it that you realized that you were part of the Montauk project and stuff like that? What did your journey to figuring out the truth of what you experienced, what did that look like?
Okay, well, I always knew there was something different. I just didn't know what it was. I had experiences with UFOs, angels. That's what I called them, was angels. I had that all the time when I was little, so that was nothing new to me. And I would say when I started realizing that there was something different was when we got a TV and they were showing all of these different shows on there with aliens. And I was like, oh, aliens, not angels. And I didn't really, know what to do with the information. So I just continued life and growing up. And I knew I could do things that other people couldn't. And that was just how it was. And as far as like awakening to Montauk, I would say that happened before my husband died. He died in 2015. We were watching a lot of Ancient Aliens and Stargate, Atlantis, and we loved Star Wars. We were a Star Wars family, and I had loved Star Wars since I was a child, and I used to say Chewbacca was my boyfriend. So I just always loved anything that was to do with outer space or time travel. I loved what was that show? There were several that were time travel shows, but I can see them in my head, but I can't remember what they're called. But I liked watching anything that was to do with that. And we watched Star Trek. I always associated with the empath that sat next to the captain, Aurora, I think was her name. And I was like, that is very familiar to me, but I don't know why. So there was just little things like that growing up that I felt a familiarity with. And I started wondering as I was older and I was watching these Stargate shows, I knew that had to do with some truth. And I didn't know why I knew. And I had also started having experiences where I had gone onto ships and was given tours, and I would tell my husband about them. And I had it was kind of like a blue orb that would come into my room, and it would start up here and it would kind of drop down like a teardrop shape, and it would just do this, and I could stick my hand in it and everything. And then that night I would have some kind of spaceship experience. And I'd tell my husband about it, and he was just like, okay, let's just keep this with us, because we were still going to church, and we didn't know what to do with it. So after he passed away in 2015, I was craving some normalcy, and I thought, well, I'll watch some David Wilcock, and I found some recordings on YouTube with him interviewing um, uh, Corey Good, and when he said his story, I was just like, oh, I'm not alone, and so there was so much that he had said that was familiar with what I had experienced. I decided to go to his conference, and that's where I met a lot of people that are um, have really stepped out and helped the truther community, like Aaron and Matthew, and so many others. I met there for the first time, Clifford Mahoney, and other people like that, and that's when I started hearing more about the protocols that they use to select people to be in these programs. I knew that something happened to me. And I used to get calls on the telephone from what sounded like insects. And this happened when I was a teenager, and it's happened as much as maybe like 3 years ago. Sometimes they would call me, sometimes they would interrupt my phone calls, just whatever. And it sounds like a bunch of clicking, chirping, and sometimes they sound pissed off. And I'm just like, shut up! If you're not going to talk English to me, I don't want to talk to you, and I hang up. And sometimes they call back, and sometimes they don't. And I don't know what that is. But I I got frequency harassed in my own house, and at that time, Aaron uh, Kuhn was my roommate, and he was sitting on the couch. We were getting ready to watch TV with my boys, and all of a sudden, I had this noise inside of my head that I couldn't get out, and I felt like my brain was going to pop. And I was just like, "Oh, get out! Stop!" I was crying, I was screaming, and nobody else could hear this but me. And that's I my husband, I felt like, had been targeted, and he died of cancer. And so some of the things that we were involved in, um, I had to drop out of in order to keep from being targeted myself. And so when they started doing that to me, I was like, I don't want to do this truther stuff no more. I don't even want that group that I've been doing, that I asked you to moderate, Aaron. You take it and do whatever you want to with it. I don't want to have anything to do with it. I have to see that my kids get raised, because I'm all they got. And so I just backed away from everything. And now my kids, I have 3 adults, and then I have a teenager still in high school, and they all know about all of this stuff with me. Um, and I talked to them, and I said, I think it's time for me to explore this. And that's when I went to the Journey to Truth conference in May, and I met James, and he was sharing his testimony with me. And he got to the Project Montauk, and there was a picture of the praying mantis, and he started talking about that, and I lost all the strength in all of my muscles and dropped and caught myself just before I became a puddle on the floor. And I was just like, wow, that's quite a reaction. Knowing, what I know about testing, muscle testing, I was like, I lost all muscle, and this is real. And he's like, do you think that you're ever been a part of this? And I was like, well, I may not want to admit it, but my body says yes, obviously. And so I started talking more about it with him, and I started sharing some of the things that I remembered and that have triggered me in the past. And he was like, yeah, definitely. So he invited me on Montauk Adventure, and that's where I met you two. And I got really triggered there. I remembered so much. And I still am trying to wrap my head around it, because I feel like I grew up there and I felt like I was at home. And it's hard to wrap my mind around since, I have this life too in my memory. So it's been interesting to say the least to try and grasp.
Chastity, I can't help but notice the lighthouse picture or painting there behind you. It's not exactly the same, but it's very reminiscent of the one at Montauk Point on the east end of Long Island, New York. There,
Hmm.
how long have you had that, and is there any connection? Do you think?
Actually, I just received it. It was gifted to me, and I put it up because of Montauk. And I've always been drawn to the beach, and it's crazy because I'm landlocked. I'm in Kansas, and there is not a beach around. I wasn't born here, but this is where I grew up. And so going to the beach is not in been it's not ever been anything that I've done consistently.
And then, speaking of being at the Montauk Point there earlier this summer in August, around August 12th, I'd say, when we were visiting the lighthouse area. Um, I remember at one point speaking with you and some of the other Montauk survivors at this when we were at a bluff, and I think some of you said you had specific memories. If you want to speak to those, and then I think it was Colin or someone else, maybe not Colin, but it was someone else confirmed having similar imagery and memories, and you two hadn't spoken yet. I got to speak to both of you separately while we were all there at the bluff together.
The Peter
Yeah.
Pan
Yeah.
memories.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I've always been very afraid of cliffs. And even like when we went to Arizona and my kids were with me, I was always scared that they would get too close to the edge and fall off. And I really didn't know why. And when I got there, I had to inch up to the cliff because those feelings started rising up in me. And I wanted to yank everybody back away from the edge, and they were all standing over there with their arms out. And I'm like, ooh. and but I finally, made my way up there, and I was just like, oh my gosh. And I remembered jumping off and not really jumping off, but flying away from that point and flying over the water, and and it was just easy. I remember doing that kind of stuff, but I also remember watching a lot of people fall to their death there.
Yeah, not everybody can do it. James Rink talks about how some of these Illuminati, like these elites, they'd have parties where they would, throw us in a lion's pit to see which ones of us would levitate above the lion's pit. So I think it was a combination of like what abilities you specialized in, and then like how heightened your fight or flight response is. Because a lot of our abilities, that's how they would activate them, is fight or flight, and so that's a reason why they would do stuff like push us off a cliff or whatever. They would push us to the very edge to the point where if we wanted to survive, we would have to activate our abilities. So that's where that comes from. I got to be honest with you, I don't remember the cliff or flying. I'm sure it's real. I don't have any memories of it. But yeah, that is definitely an interesting memory, and I did see that you weren't the only one who remembered that, and people were talking about it. So um, it's kind of unbelievable to people who might be listening, but it's 100% fact that the Marvel characters are all based on, or mostly, I should say, maybe not all of them, but very, very much so loosely based on real life Montauk assets. So it's something to think about. And the abilities that we had are kind of hard to fathom, kind of sound like kind of crazy, but it's true. Flying is possible. I did an interview with Bhakta Peter recently where he talked about how back in the Vedic texts, they would talk about enchanting objects and making them fly and people flying and stuff like that. So it's not even actually a new concept, but it's just something that we've totally forgotten and seems totally foreign to us and sounds kind of loony, but it's not. It's possible. And yeah, superhuman abilities are real, and that's what a lot of what Montauk was unlocking those kind of abilities. But yeah, that was an interesting thing to talk about. Is there any other stuff that you remember about at Montauk that they did to activate certain abilities that you have? Any other things that you remember when it comes to that?
Yeah. I remember them beating me up. Um, I was very beat up. Like my face was very distorted, and they even tortured personal parts, and in order to push me to a point of being able to be handled and go into a hypervigilant state of self protection, and pushing me to, like, they would tell me, defend yourself, and I remember that. I remember water being poured over me. I still do not like to have my hand away from my nose. If I go underwater, I have to hold my nose. I can't do water. I can swim, but I have to hold my nose. So it's kind of an awkward swim, unless my head's above the water. But yeah, I definitely have water issues, because they would pour the water over my face and put my head under the water and hold it there. I remember those kind of things. And just, it was like a constant barrage of water. Um, and then those were just the things that they did in order to trauma bond me to a handler so that I could be programmed. Um, and I know that I opened up portals because I actually have done it. I did it in my kitchen one time while I was doing dishes. I was speaking in tongues, or the light language, and when I turned around, there was a mirror, like a plasma type puddle on my floor in the kitchen. And I almost stepped into it. I don't know what would have happened if I had, but it was there, and I screamed. My kids came running, and I like went, no, to keep them from jumping, just running into it, because it took up the whole floor in the kitchen. And I was like, what in the world? What did I do? How did I do that?
Yeah, that's a
So,
good thing to bring up. As somebody recently said to me in a conversation I was having with them, like that was a Montauk survivor. They told me, they said, you said that we all walk through portals using like technology, and that's not true. We could open portals, and I don't know where people got that idea like from, that I said that, because like maybe in some of my first interviews I didn't understand, but no, certain people, including myself, could open portals. I don't think it was everyone. Some people could even instantly teleport, which was very rare, but I remember at least one person could do that. They could instantly teleport like anywhere. And yeah, the opening of portals, sometimes it's like a blue, like energy, like you're talking about, like is that what it looked like, when like a blue kind of like almost
yeah,
like
I say sparkles,
space sparse, yeah,
like
like
sparkles, like
on this
flashes of
necklace,
light.
because
Yeah,
this is a phoenix coming out of a portal.
yeah,
um and but there's also a modality which this came later, and once they figured this out, this was the safest, was using a mirror. And it would literally turn into a doorway where like it literally looked like just like there's that turned into a door to, and on the other side was like another planet or another time or both, and you just walk through it like a doorway. And that's a common method, like when they activate us to go on missions or altars and stuff like that. A lot of times it'll be when we're staying in hotels, and we'll just walk through the mirror. And I don't want to like take over your interview, but that's another thing that people aren't understanding with the altars, is like they don't need to come send some beam down and put you to sleep and erase your memories. You have alters. All of us have alters, and they just wake up and just do things. And you are on the back seat. You are not the front seat. Your alters are more. Who do you think is more powerful? The version of you that opened portals and fought in battles as a super soldier and could manipulate time and had superpowers. Who do you think is more powerful? That version of you or the version of you right now that has to go to work at Denny's or whatever the hell? Like, which version do you think is more powerful? Obviously, it's the version that has the powers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we don't understand that they programmed our brain like a computer so we would just turn on and do our jobs automatically and erase our own memories. And not only that, they don't have to insert cover memories. We do that ourselves. There's like a program running in our brains. So like, I just wanted to clear some of those things up, not to hijack. Like, I want to hear more about your testimony.
Well,
but
I like that you brought up the mirrors, because I was talking to my mom about all of this, because I've been wanting to talk to her a lot ever since I shared my testimony in May. And because a lot has come forward, and I was like, I'm going to start sharing this stuff, and I need my mom to hear it from me first. And so I started talking to her today and telling her that I was going to do this interview. And we were talking about this mirror that I had on my door in my room. And it was from ages 12 to 15, no, maybe 14, almost 15. And it was a full length mirror on the door. And she told me, she said, I've always thought that you walked through that mirror all the time. I was like, whoa, because she never said that to me. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So she was aware of some of the things. And we did take that mirror down because I started struggling with cutting and depression. And I had tried to commit suicide at age 15. And we were like, we got to take that down, because my mom knew that was a portal. And she swore that I walked through it all the time. So that's coming from my mom.
yeah. So, yeah, that's something that I want people to understand is like your alters are just inside you. They're not somewhere else. I mean, they might be time displaced and be somewhere else right now, but they are currently inside you, and your brain has all these different programs inside of it that are compartmentalized, but your more powerful alters are programmed to just come forward when they want to and just do stuff. You'll wake up in the middle of the night and you won't wake up as you. You'll wake up as your alter. You'll walk through a mirror in your room or whatever it is. Maybe you can just open a portal depending on who you are. Maybe they need to have people come get you depending on who you are too, because not everybody can open portals. That's a specialized ability. But at the end of the day, your alters are the ones to just wake up and just do stuff. We're programmed to just do stuff. That's what MK Ultra is. It's they programmed us like a computer to do certain things. And right now, what you're seeing us on the internet talking, doing these interviews and breaking this all down is a result of the programming not working hard enough, not sticking and breaking down. And I just want people to understand that, like the alters aspect of this is paramount. It's so important. And every single person that is in these programs that says that they don't have alters is wrong. Okay, like everyone has alters. If you're in these programs, they did that to you. Period.
Well, speaking of chastity, over time, from that period around 2015, when you're perhaps recovering memories, and then now, and then having speaking with other survivors, and then having memories of, for example, being tortured with water or other things. Have you been able to piece together more of a narrative of whether it was time at Montauk or any of these other projects or programs?
Well, at birth, my mom was 14 when she had me. And I was born at Luke Air Force Hospital in Arizona. And they would not take me to my mom. My mom confirmed this again today, that they wanted me to be adopted by the friends of the doctor, and he, from the moment that she was pregnant, tried to get her to give me up. And they didn't bring me to my mom. My mom's like, you were either born at 7:15 or at 12, but on my birth certificate it says 2 something. They changed my name. She wanted me to be Chastity with ITY. They changed it to Chastity. So I have a name change, a time change, a constant barragement of give your baby up to us for so that my friends can adopt it by the doctor. I was born in the Air Force Hospital. My grandfather had to come and get me from the nursery and take me to my mom, which is correspondent to, since I was a bastard child. I didn't have a father. So he was the one that had to revoke their um, kidnapping of me and take me to my mom. If he hadn't done that, I don't know what would have happened, to be honest with you. But I didn't get taken to my mom for hours.
Now,
And
if I may, is your father is his mystery and identity, or was he associated with the Air Force in any way, or military, or?
um no, um he was 17, and they sent him to Job Corps. But they did. Okay, so my mom was not um her hymen was still intact while she was pregnant with me. And so technically she was still medically a virgin. Okay. And so the doctor said, I can either break the hymen or you can let the father break the hymen. And so she chose for my dad to break the hymen. Um, so there's that too.
Was that so? Did anyone say anything about that? Like, wait a second, that's not normal. Usually,
I doubt that's common, right? Like that's
Right,
probably
no,
pretty
that's not common. No,
yeah.
that's like a
I've
very
noticed that there's
miraculous thing.
a lot of mysterious circumstances surrounding birth for certain people in these programs.
Mhm.
Um, I had Anthony Johnson on the show from Hawaii, and he gave a really brief testimony, but he talked about how his dad was kind of like a mystery, and his dad, it was his his mom was pregnant at the hospital, having him like going into labor, and they couldn't find the dad, and apparently he was in another room with another woman who was also pregnant, and he disappeared shortly after he was born and was never seen again. And there's a lot of like you know obviously military activity on Hawaii. And there's just so many other people too that come forward to me and they tell me about the really weird circumstances surrounding their birth. And there's supposedly this thing where like they take the kid away for a second. It's common. I can't remember who it was that talked about it, but yeah, in that amount of time, who knows what they're doing to your kid? Sending them on a 20 and back, like how do you know? Like,
Right.
so
Yeah.
it's just yeah, that's definitely I think an important part of your testimony, and there's probably going to be other people watching this who are going to probably be like, dang, I had something similar happen to me. And so yeah, it's not unheard of. It's very common for like Montauk type survivors to have those kinds of experiences. So yeah,
were you going to say more, Chastity, about some of the things that you've pieced together between
Oh,
then and
yeah.
now?
Okay, so let me backtrack here in my mind. Well, you were talking about altars and something that I have always done, and I growing up in church, we didn't believe that there was another lifetime. This was it. And so I was 11 or 12, and I was sitting in class, and we were learning about the Salem witch trials. And all of a sudden I started having this smell of burnt flesh, and I started getting really nauseated, and I was like, "Oh," and I had to run to the restroom because I tossed everything out. And I was just like, why did this affect me? How in the world do I have a smell like this that I would know. I've never smelled anything like that before. And so I was just kind of perplexed by it, but it always stuck with me. And then I've always been a dreamer. Like my dreams are like movies. And I've dreamt about being other people. Other I had to write journals for school, like for Cleopatra, and I wrote about sexual experiences and rendezvousing around town and partying at the age of 12. I wore dresses all the time. I didn't even wear makeup or anything like that, so I wouldn't know about these things. But I was able to write about them, and my teacher was even like, "How did you do this?" And I was like, "It must be from watching soap operas with my mom." And then uh, there was other times, like as an adult, that I started journaling my dreams, and I was a Tibetan monk that was female, and I was chased. They wanted me to give them the key to Nirvana, and they were killing all of the female monks. And so there was that. I had a dream where I was, and these are like full stories. I wrote them out, all that I could remember. And my husband was like, "Man, this is. I wonder if this is how Spielberg and gets his stuff for his
Well,
movies."
what we found out is a lot of the times when people are writing these stories, it's actually their subconscious memory surfacing and actual experiences coming out.
Yeah,
Philip K. Dick would be a perfect example. He actually came forward and said that some of his books, like The Man from the High Castle and Blade Runner, etc., he came forward and said that they were based on his experiences in alternate realities. And I can
yeah,
also attest to this because I made a comic when I was a teenager, and it was all about like the castle with Marduk and me purposely getting killed so I could escape. It's a whole long story, but
yeah,
I got recall once I was older and found that comic. I got well, I was already having recall of Marduk and stuff like that, but you find out that, and other people that are maybe watching this too, the people that are the viewers watching this, I mean, maybe you could think about that. It's something that seems to happen across the board to different experiences where they are creative people. A lot of times we're creative people and we'll make little comics, write little stories, and turns out they're based in reality. And these dreams that we have too, a lot of times when we have experiences, either it's like a 20 and back that feels like a dream, or you're just getting recall through your dreams. It's, you know what I mean? Like you're just remembering things and through dreaming it. And
yeah,
yeah, so it's you're not alone on those experiences, and it's definitely I'm sure it made you think, definitely, after being told
yeah.
that we only have one lifetime. I'm sure it helped break that programming down real fast.
Yeah, and after I went to the conference in 2017, I started noticing that I would just get really tired and for no reason. And then I would be asleep, and it was like I would go live another life somewhere. And I started noticing that not only was I remembering other lifetimes, but then it felt like I was putting this body down and picking up another one somewhere else on another timeline and doing things. And I would come back with bruises, scratches, pain. And I was like, okay, this is weird. What is this? I mean, like, I literally would have like hand marks, bruises on my arms, my legs, and I would be sore. And I thought, this is really weird. And this still happens to me. I will just get really tired. It's like an anesthesia hits me, and then boom, I'm asleep. I'm having a completely different experience. And I've had so many of them, and they're so vivid.
Can I ask you something? I have that too sometimes where I fall asleep and it's just like I get tired out of nowhere and it kind of seems like there's something weird behind it. But
Yeah,
do you also ever have this happens to me where for a week you'll get up at exactly the same time in the middle of the night? Like,
I do that all the time.
yeah, I've been
I
having
will
that.
ever not do it. If I sleep through the night, I'm lucky. I'm always up at the same time all night long, every
Yeah.
night.
So that's interesting. I guess like it is true. Like when I talk about the altars and everything else, I think that one thing that we need to stop doing in this community, like people in general, is paint everything with a broad paintbrush. And I'm not trying to do that either, because for certain people, they might knock out your whole family with that wave and physically come in and take you. They do that. So I don't want to like sit here and be gaslighting people who have experienced that. I'm sure I've experienced it too. All I'm saying is people do need to understand the authors and how powerful are, and they're kind of autonomous. They just do things and they work for these different time groups, and we're kind of just on the back seat taking a ride. We can't control it, and that's why I think it's important for us to come forward and talk, is because it's just kind of you actually showed us this would be a good segue to talk about asserting our sovereignty. You actually mentioned that when we talked briefly at the beginning of the interview. Do you want to go into that about how these programs take our sovereignty from us and kind of the path that you've taken to reclaiming your sovereignty?
Okay. Well, one of the things I wanted to say too is that um, I asked. So when I have a question about something, I just ask it and I wait for the answer. And I asked, why do they put us back into this life and keep taking us? And um, why do we have altars? Why do we have clones? You know, what is this that's going on?
That's the billion
And
dollar question. That's what everybody's asking.
yeah, and so what I got an answer. This was the answer that I got, that they wanted us to evolve naturally in order to see and adapt with the lessons and experiences that we have in this normie life, and so that we could continue to grow without being um, necessarily taken and re-traumatized, that this life is actually providing enough trauma that we are in anyways and are trying to deal with this being our life. And so when we re-traumatize ourselves through relationships that we get into that aren't good, or remembering something a little bit too in depth, because the thing is we can do this to ourselves. They don't have to do it like what you were saying. We do this to ourselves now naturally because they programmed us to do that. So we seek out relationships that will trigger us so that we have another handler, and then, you know, sometimes we just want to know, and so we do a really deep regression, and we remember really too much, because we don't need to re-traumatize ourselves with learning the depths of the experiment that they did, and the torture that they did in order to push us into the hypervigilant state. We have those emotions, and as long as we get triggered because of the chronic PTSD that we live in, all we need is for that radio system behind us to all of a sudden start shrieking, and you know, because there's feedback, and we can get sent into a trigger which traumatizes us again, and then whatever we're trying to do, and however we learn to deal with that, is an evolvement from what they did to us. And so that allows us, our altars, to go into new situations and be used for other things because they can do more, handle more. Does that make sense? And so through us living our lives out here, they when they do put us back into an altar, that altar, even though they have all those great gifts and everything, they've evolved because we evolved, because they get our memories too.
Mm-hmm.
And they get our tools that we've adapted. So all these adaptions that we've done in order to live our life, they get too.
They grow with
They,
you.
yeah, they grow with us, and that makes us higher demand, out on that black market that they have, where they will come and they will take our DNA and on our memories, and they put it into that clone, and then they go sell that on the black market and be like, we got the new upgrade of Chastity.
Wow. Yeah, that is a thing that they do. They have
They
little
have pirates.
conventions. Yeah, well, they have conventions where they'll all meet, and I
Yeah.
remember being at these, and they stand, they talk and they look at you, and they sell clones of people, and they buy a little DNA sample and the activation codes, and or depending on who they are, they might need to buy a full live clone because they don't have the ability to do that themselves. It depends on what group, but it's a black market, and
Yeah.
that's like kind of one of the things that we on this channel are trying to like highlight, is we're tackling a really tough subject, probably the toughest subject of all, which is human trafficking. That's what's going on here, and that the reason why we don't know our place in the universe and the cosmos and our own history, yada yada yada, is because they want to nefariously use the knowledge of that, hide it, and use it against us. So that's why we're here talking right now, is to figure out the path of journeying to truth, as it will, and figuring out, like, trying to get humanity on board with figuring it out so that we can be free, and we're no longer a slave to these programs.
Right.
But yeah, I was talking about your sovereignty. You
Yeah.
had like a promise you made to yourself, like a contract you signed. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Okay, so a year ago in October, I started going to what's called a harmonic egg, and this is what it looks like. Let's see. And this lady, it's as big as the room. So, like, if I had one in this room, it would take the whole thing up. I don't even think it would fit in this room. It's so big, and it has to be built on site, and it's a dodecahedron shape, and it's acoustic. It's built out of particular woods, and they use different lights inside of it. And I have some pictures. I haven't posted the pictures because I wanted to wait to talk about it here. Plus, it takes a week to integrate the when you go and sit in it, and it has frequencies. They have special songs that have been created to basically what it does is it resets your ANS system and your autonomic nervous system. And so when you're put through trauma, it resets your nervous system, and that's why people get PTSD. So your ANS system is out of whack when you have PTSD, and when you are in constant fight or flight, you're constantly secreting all of these hormones in order to be hypervigilant, and you're either fawning or in fight or flight, but you're always trying to survive. And that's chronic PTSD. PTSD is when you experience something one time and it sets you into panic. Chronic PTSD is having it over and over and over and over. And so I have been in chronic PTSD. That's been my life. I've not ever really never had a counselor. I always have a counselor that I'm going to, and that's what we've been working on, is getting me out of this chronic fight or flight. And I have disassociated since I was a teenager. My mom, I said I would just go into this blank stare, and sometimes I knew I was doing it, sometimes I didn't. So and I still have issues with that. But they have gotten better because I've become more aware of what my triggers do and how to rebalance myself and bring myself back down and ground. Um, and so what I started doing was this harmonic egg, and I've gone, I think, 19 or 20 times in this egg over the last year. I got a membership so I could at least go once a month. So I never let myself get to where I was having to start completely over. Um, and the last one, when I started sharing and opening up more with the lady, they called themselves the owner of the egg, they call themselves guardians. And so when I started sharing with her about all of these experiences that I was having and the memories of Montauk and the things that I was doing, and she said, "Oh, we should do that protocol with you that's for childhood trauma and for sexual trauma." And I was like, "Oh, okay, let's do that." And so I started doing that. There was 6 protocols, and I finished the last one was on October 27th, and I signed this Declaration of Sovereignty. And I'm going to read it to you so that you can hear, because I was like, this is perfect for all of what we are dealing with as survivors of these programs. It says, Declaration of Sovereignty. In strictly legal terms, sovereignty describes the power of a state to govern itself and its subjects. In this sense, sovereignty is the highest source of the law. Our sovereignty to our soul is the highest order and cannot be broken by anyone of any form. I, Chastity Suzette Kaiser Campbell, born on August 5th, 1973, hereby declare absolute sovereignty over my human body, all facets of my energetic body, consciousness, and my soul for all of eternity everlasting. I deny any negative energy, entity, spirit, dark force, or sickness to use my temple for anything physical or non physical that is not of my highest good. If I participated in an experiment or event with or without permission for reasons I believe to be have been valid at the time and that participation violated my sovereignty, I now declare that contract permission to be revoked. Any piece, part, essence, fragment, light, health, vitality stolen due to this event must be 100% returned in full, in light and love, and in the total perfection and for my highest and best good. If through my involvement there was any implication of a contract of ownership of my soul, I am declaring an empowered breach of contract. I am energetically disintegrating any contractual agreement, sending its ashes out to the universe never to exist again or cause harm to anything for eternity. I declare that any harm that has been caused due to this unwelcome and unlawful incident be reversed at a soul cell level. All of my connections to Source will be reinstated fully and completely. Any trauma caused by this incident will be released, washed away from my soul. I declare that I am a divine soul walking this earth with grace and ease, with my soul completely intact and complete sovereignty over me, myself, and I. And I signed and dated for October 27th, 2023, and the Guardian was my witness.
Congrats.
And who wrote up those words? Those are beautiful words.
Yeah, I believe the creator of the egg, her name is Gail Lynn.
And one thing I just want to state for the censors here is we aren't advisors of medical information. This is strictly for entertainment purposes.
Yeah.
However, this is some powerful testimony, and I'm sure you, the viewers, can use your common sense and better judgment to get the message that we're getting at here. Obviously, we have to say things like this.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, continue. That's amazing. I love that. I think that you need to share that, or I don't know if you're allowed to, but maybe we could write up our own version too, this to avoid taking somebody's intellectual property or whatever it is. But I think
Right.
that's important. I want to write up something like that because in these programs, there's been more than one time where I remember signing a bunch of contracts and stuff like that. And in my opinion, I was not in a state where that is legal, like where that's
Right.
legally binding. Like if you put somebody in some sort of altered state in order to get them to sign a contract, that's illegal.
Illegal.
That
Coercion.
nullifies the contract. So I didn't agree to any of this. So
Right.
I myself, yeah, it's important for me to assert my sovereignty, and I couldn't. So beautifully put. I'm really interested in these guardians and this egg that you're talking about. Where's it located? Where's the facility that you go to?
The one that I go to is in Wichita, but they're all over. And you can go to theharmonicegg.com and click on locations, and you can find one by you. And I've talked to other survivors, and there's one in particular that's up in Maryland, and he started going, and he's like, man, this is the best thing that has ever happened in a long, long time. He said, I can feel it working. So, yeah, I've just been trying to get everybody to at least just go try it once.
Get
I,
on board with the egg, guys.
yeah, go be reborn.
I have to look that up now and see if there's one near us. I'm sure there is. I mean, we're on the West Coast.
Probably one in Vegas or something.
Yeah.
I think the one that's close to you is in California.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's awesome. I'm just like, wow. I mean, I look back at some of the pictures, and I know where I was at, a year ago in October. And one of the questions that I was asked in my first interview when I gave my testimony back in May was, do I think that my weight was a form of protection? Is that why maybe I couldn't lose weight before? And I was like, well, I guess we're going to find out, because it's either going to get worse or it's going to get better. And since I shared my testimony, I have, since May, I've dropped 50 pounds.
50.
Woo-hoo, good for
And
you.
so I'm feeling really good. Was it scary? Hell yeah, it was scary. I mean, it's still just kind of like, I'm still wrapping my head around all of this, and I just have to take it one day at a time, and I have to give myself grace, just like anybody else. Give yourself grace, let yourself flow, give yourself some ease, do what you need to comfort yourself and protect yourself, and go try one of these eggs. What have you got to lose?
Yeah, I definitely am interested in it. I'm going out on a trip to California soon.
Yeah.
I have to maybe check it out and see if I can maybe hit up one of these eggs on the way.
Yeah.
There's a lot of technology that's like that. That's really interesting. I know Arcturus Ra talks about a sort of like med bed he built that is very similar. Which there's an interview on Super Soldier Talk that it probably doesn't do the exact same things, but there's a lot of interesting technology out there that has to do with like. I'm not a scientist. I don't know how, like, you can't explain it all the way, but when it comes to like geometric shapes and
Mm-hmm.
sitting inside them and certain materials and stuff like that being used, there's too many people who have had testimony of using some of this equipment and some of these things, and I've had positive experiences for me to think that there's nothing to it. You know what I mean? There's
Right.
got to be something to it, and yeah, I think that's something that is amazing that I really like about you is you have a very healing energy about you that's very positive. And I think that's a very beautiful thing for somebody who's experienced such dark horrors at the hands of the Montauk Project. And I think that it's a powerful testimony that you have for you to be able to share how you've had it, like went down that path of healing, of choosing healing instead of letting your experiences hold you back and keep you in that trauma. You've decided to let go of them and in a way like overcome them and be more powerful and step into your sovereignty. And I just think that's beautiful. And I was just wondering, like, to anybody else trying to do that, like trying to step into their sovereignty, heal, let go of their trauma. Is there any advice that you can maybe give to people who are on a similar journey?
Well, I have done a lot of inner reflection and a lot of counseling. Um, like I said, I don't remember ever not going to counseling. um, One of the things that I always felt that got me through all of the negative things that ever came my way was God. I always, I was Pentecostal growing up, and I read the Bible. Um, I I don't really like organized religion. I don't like following a pastor. I feel that I can read the scriptures for myself and discern what resonates with me. And I have looked at many, many texts now. So it's not just the Bible, but that was my foundation. Um, and God, source, creator, Father, Holy Spirit, we just use different words for different things, but a lot of it does the same and has the same effect in our life. And I really think that being able to just have faith has been my strongest gift, because it gave me hope. Without having faith in something, I wouldn't have had anything to hold on to and to try to keep living for. Because there
Well,
was
that
plenty of
was
times that I tried to kill myself many times.
yeah, that's the first thing that they kind of tried to do at Montauk was make you not have any faith, make you not have any hope. I remember, and I guess it's a good chance to go on the memory that I have you. I only have one real good memory of you, and it's you showed me the picture of we got the dog here. You want to say hello?
Hi.
Maybe not so professional to have the dog say hi mid interview, but I'm sure the audience will appreciate it anyway. What was I saying? Yeah, the puppies are here trying to get
You have
love.
one real memory of me.
Oh yeah, okay. And it was you showed me the picture of when you were a little girl, and it triggered like I remember you came in and we were being intaked or whatever, or you were being intaked. You were new, basically, is what I remember. And you were saying like, I'm gonna get to go home. My mom and dad are gonna find me, and like they're looking for me right now, and these people are gonna pay and all this stuff. And I was just like, no, your mom and dad are not gonna find you. Like you're in a time bubble. Like no one can find you. I was just like, you're stuck here forever. This is eternity, and you're in hell now. Like welcome. And I was like literally like a 9-year-old kid telling you this stuff. Like, I was making you cry. I remember that. And
Oh,
it turns out you were right. So who gets the last laugh now? You were right. There was hope. We did get to see our parents again. We did get to leave Montauk. Um, and yeah, I think that's like a huge thing that they try to do is to break your hope, break your faith. Because if you had that, then you weren't very useful to them.
mm-hmm.
And that's a good way to make someone really evil. I know from personal experience, if you don't think there's any hope, if you don't think there's anyone that's ever going to come rescue you, and you're out for yourself, and every single person or thing that you ever love is somehow used to take advantage of you and be used against you to manipulate you, it can turn you into a really bad person without any faith, without any hope. And I remember a lot of times when they would do these rituals where they would sacrifice a kid and have like a like a Baphomet come through the portal or whatever it was, and they're some really nasty stuff, sexual stuff, and going on with eat cannibalism and stuff like that. I remember they would say to us, "Where's your God?" I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I do. I
They'd ask
remember being on an altar that they were going to sacrifice me on. I
yeah,
don't know. I don't remember getting sacrificed, but I know I was on the altar.
and yeah, they would
Um,
say, "Our God shows up. Here he is. Where's your God? Is your God gonna come save you?" I remember they would mock us, like
yeah.
belittle us, and I remember for a while I thought they were right.
Hmm.
I was one of them for a while. They got me to join the dark side. The Anakin Skywalker thing. They used similar mind control techniques to make me evil. They
Yeah.
killed my trauma twin, made me think it was my fault. It's a very similar story. It's kind of almost eerie between me and the Anakin Skywalker arc. Like I would do anything to be with my trauma twin, and that made her scared as hell of me. Like Padme and Anakin Skywalker is like, I don't want you to kill a bunch of little kids to be with me. If you have to
Right.
do that to be with me, then don't be with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like that kind of thing. But yeah, the moment that I found faith again and I found hope again was I rescued somebody from some sexual abuse that was going on that wasn't sanctioned, that wasn't a part of programming, and they ended up like seeking solace and protection in me, and eventually it turned into us like falling in love, and that saved my soul. I really think so because I was able to learn from that experience that like true love does exist, and nobody can ever like as much as they can try to manufacture love in a lab and use it against you, like true love is always going to prevail. Like it really is. And I know that sounds cheesy, but it's one of those things where it's like if you can't sit with that, like if it sounds cheesy, like you just need a little longer, because like it really is true. Like these people that are so evil, that do all these terrible things, that did all these terrible things to us when we were kids and stuff like that, it's because they lack love in their heart. They didn't understand love. If they did, they never would have done any of that stuff. And
Right.
that's why I'm not the way I was. That's why I'm not evil. That's why I'm not like part of their little club. Like why I didn't join it in the here and now. I've known all about it, is because I understand that love is more powerful and is more important. And eventually, when you join their path and join their little dark club, you eventually get sucked into an abyss of
Yeah.
just of horror that can't be described. I know I was there, because like you build up all this negative karma, and it's so hard to get out. And the only way to appease your appetite for like evil is to like do more horrendous, more evil things, and it just turns into this hole that you feel like you can't get out of. And I
Yeah.
know that I'm very lucky and I'm very grateful that I got out of that hole. And us as Montauk time soldiers, we all should be grateful, because they tried to bring us into their darkness. And look at us all now. Look at where we are. You're a healer. James is out doing the super soldier talk and has been for 12 years. I mean, they tried to
Yeah.
bring us down into their corner and into their abyss and into their darkness, and we have done nothing but fight back the whole time. And I think we all should be proud of ourselves.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. I my mom came across some people as I was growing up that helped her. Um, and one of them was, her name was Wanda, and she really, I would say, instilled in me how to fight um, the darkness, because she would send me like manuals. They were churchy, but it was like, strong man, what's his name, what's his game, and it would talk about um, like this entity, and this is what they do to bring this into your life, and this is how to come against them. She would send me Bible promises and stuff about what God thought of me and how he loved me, and she constantly prayed for me. And she's a significant, well, she's on the other side now, she's passed, but she was a very significant source of me learning spiritual warfare. And because I remember at age 12 um, praying in my room, and a demon coming in there and taunting me, just like when we were in Montauk, telling me, "You're nothing, you're going to go to hell, and I'm going to take you with me," and laughing at me, telling me that my prayers were not being heard, that I was just blowing smoke in the air, and that there was no God. And like the other half of my room was in flames, and this thing is dancing around in these flames, taunting me, harassing me, telling me there is no God and you don't have enough faith. You think that you have enough faith, but you don't. And so I remember that kind of stuff. And I always remember fighting for the good. Even as a child, before I even had a TV and knew what a witch was, I remember battling a witch in the playground during my dream state. That was there were all the kids in the neighborhood were like zombified, walking to her cauldron to jump in, which later I find out as an adult, this was a memory of these kids being taken from this place that I lived in. They were being taken into a portal by a black magic, and I was coming against, I was trying to wake these kids up. Don't go to this, don't go to this, don't do this. And I remember, the spider in the corner that watched me with its beady red eyes. And I remember the shadow man that came in my house repeatedly and that would come to me in my dreams. And that's how I was being taken, was by the shadow men. there was one in particular that always came and took me. And that's one of the things that I remembered at Montauk was the shadow man. And that's how I was like, oh, so that's how they've been taking me. We were watching the Montauk Chronicles, and I just, there was like words that were coming and being triggered in me were saying, okay, this goes to this and this goes to this. And then here's your memory. And that's when I started remembering the sexual trauma and things like that I was put through. And so I think that, you know, probably when you met me as a child and you were telling me those things, I had already lived with a 20 and back or whatever it was that I lived through. I think I had already been there, done that. And so when you told me that, I was like,
No, I was lying.
I knew that I was going to get to go back, even though you told me I wasn't going.
Eventually, it got to the point where I didn't remember my parents, and I thought that I came from a test tube. And I think that's what they did for most of us, is we didn't remember. They erased our memory of our real parents, and they made us think some pretty bizarre stuff. I don't think it was Montauk, but I know Project Ibis, which is very heavily connected to Montauk. They made us think that Queen Elizabeth was mom and George Bush Sr. was dad. And Christy Campbell talks about that too. And which, by the way, I need to get you guys on an interview together, like because
Yeah,
like
I want to meet her.
yeah, you guys' interview, you guys' testimony complements each other. It's very interesting that you have the same last name. You have a similar kind of inflection in your voice when you talk. And yeah, I know you guys are both at Montauk and have quite a few memories of that. But I forgot what I was saying. What was I saying? You got anything to say, Brian? You've been quiet for a second. Any questions or anything?
Well, I was going to ask Chastity, so far in all of our discussions, we mentioned, I believe, stuff happening at Montauk, and then maybe other places where they were doing like certain like rituals and things like that. Do you have any memories of anything off-world, quote unquote, or in other places other than Earth that you could speak to?
I remember being on I guess it was like a base. It was shaped like a diamond, and it had living quarters in it. Like at the top and at the bottom was more like um, the maintenance of the facility, like, you know, cooking, the kitchen, cleaning, different things in order to make the society run. So the top half was the society, and in the bottom or in the middle of it was like this huge terrarium, and there was no lights, absolutely no lights. It was just lit, and um, I this was connected to another place, and it was where they had the meetings for like the Galactic Federation, and you walked out of this area, and there was a swimming pool there too, like exercise facilities. And okay, so you go down this long hallway, and you can look out either side, and you see space. And it's red carpet all the way to this auditorium, and in the auditorium, when I saw the place where they gave testimony in Star Wars, I was just like, oh,
Yeah,
that's
it
what
looks
I
just like
saw. Like
this
there's these
disclosure.
pods, and 3 people can sit in these pods, and they're like the representatives, and then there's people that sit behind them like they're empaths, and there's like a place for I think 3 or 4 people to sit in these chairs, and then in the middle there's like you stand in the center and it raises up, and you can talk to everybody. And so I remember going in there and sitting behind the representatives for Earth, and we had these plastic things that we had in our pocket, and we rolled them out, and they were like tablets that we could put in our information about what we were. Yes, that. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That is it. And so when we were when we were listening to the different people address the congregation or the audience, we put into the tablet, like we were to empath read them, and if they felt genuine, when did they not feel genuine, when did we feel that they were betraying trust or not being honest, and then how we, each one of us had a reading, and then they would take ours and put it together and um, figure out what they thought of this person's testimony according to what we empath. And so I remember doing that kind of stuff. And I remember other things too, like the way that they taught the kids, going back to the building, or the ship, the diamond ship. The kids were in a room that everything had glass you could see through. And there were egg-shaped chairs and desks or cubicles that they could sit in and watch. Like, it was constant barragement of images. And then the other one was they would have like 3D projections that they were manipulating in the air, or 4D or holographics or whatever. So they were doing that. And then some of them were making things float. So they were doing, is it kinesthetics, where they float objects?
Telekinesis.
Telekinesis. Yeah, they were doing that and making things float. And others were just like, I guess it might have been a hologram. And they were just being taught through this image that was in the air. And I remember thinking, wow, that's really cool. Our suits that we had on were very much like skin, and we went like this and down, and that would open them and go back up, and that would close them. So there were no zippers. I remember there being replicators in there, and basically you just went over and thought about what you wanted, and it would give it to you.
How was the food from the replicators? Were they the nice ones where it all tasted pretty real?
It tasted good.
There's different level, like that's another thing that people a lot of times don't understand when you talk about this. Different groups have different better stuff than other people. So sometimes the replicators will be kind of crappy, and they kind of print food like a printer. They're not that great. And then other ones they'll be nice, and you can't even tell the difference. Pretty much, like it's almost exactly the same. So, but yeah, it sounds like that was one of the nicer ones.
Yeah,
especially with the mind interface. There's ones where it's a screen and you can choose from different things on the menu. It's like a touch screen, But yeah, that's one of the nicer ones for sure.
Yeah, and so that's one of the ships that I remember being on, and that was before my husband died. I was taken to that one, and then after my husband died, I remember being on ships that were more like what was in Captain America, that were in our atmosphere, but up high in the sky. And they, I don't really know, they looked like platforms, and they had different, like airplanes that were more, I guess like the TRB, the triangle ones like that. I remember being on a deck next to an admiral on that, and they were knockwaffen. And
Actually, can you repeat yourself there? You cut out for 1 second. You remember being on deck of one of these carriers in the air next to an admiral, and what happened?
It was a knockwaffen fleet, and I was his empath. So I've done the empath thing for quite a while, I would say. In different lifetimes.
It makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna have to look into that. I wonder if they ever used me for that, because I know that a lot of what I was used for in these programs was like remote viewing, and I definitely had empathic abilities and stuff like that. So yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting job
Yeah.
to have. Like an SSP job that only like a SSP type person could do. A normal Joe Schmo couldn't be an empath, right? And
Right.
it makes sense if you think about it. That once you get to that level, that you'd want to have that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that with us.
And yeah, I've done remote viewing too. That was also part of my thing, was remote viewing. And I can still do that. So,
Yeah, I had a thing where they used me as like a crystal ball. I was lying on a table. I was adolescent, and I was hooked up to a lot of drugs, and I was kind of like in this hypnotic state. And they could come up to me and ask me questions and ask me to telepathically communicate with certain beings. I could even communicate with beings from other timelines and stuff like that, which they found really useful. And yeah, just those are some of the jobs that you have. They're normally, it's a job. It's not like, fun, like you got to work, but like it's better than being thrown in a pit full of lions to see if you can fly at least, right? Or
I
being put in a
actually
battle.
I actually was thrown in one of those pits. I remember that. That is when you said that, I was like, maybe that wasn't a dream.
Yeah, no, they would do that to us. They would see it was entertainment for them. They'd see who could fly and who would get eaten. And if you did get eaten, they of course really got off on the fact that they could just wake you up in another clone body and you'd
Right.
be there again, still all terrified. They really get off on that, on the fact that they
Mhm.
could just make us wake up over and over again. And they really puts them on a huge power trip. I mean, can you imagine how much of a power trip that would give you? It does. It gives them a huge
Yeah.
power trip.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely. I mean, they have that whole God complex thing going on for sure.
Chastity, I was going to ask, in terms of the timeline, when let's say you're being an empath with the Galactic Federation at a ship or a base or meeting kind of platform type area or base ship, um, are there is it like you're going back and forth between them and Nachtwaffen, or it's like you were with Nachtwaffen in these programs for a time, which I personally would label perhaps more service to self, and then here you are with say more Galactic Federation, hopefully more service to other types. Are you bouncing back and forth in between, or was it you spent a period with these guys and then that ended, and then now you're with these other guys?
That's a good question. I don't really have an answer. I don't know. They're just
We
memories
appreciate your
that,
honesty.
yeah, that's memories that I just have, and they're not full, like, intact lifetime memories. It's just like just a spot. This is a spot that I remember out of being there.
Okay, one thing I wanted to touch base on in this interview for sure is something that I find myself as an activist of disclosure for being a Montauk survivor is the fact that Montauk was run by Luciferian Satanists, like the Knights of Templar. Catholic Church and stuff like that was involved, and it's all inversion of the message of Christ, and it's all they like to take good and make it evil, and take evil and make it good, yada yada yada, and confuse the hell out of everyone.
Hmm.
But I wonder if you just have any testimony to that, to the fact that like Montauk to me was more of a satanic ritual abuse site than some sort of science fiction story. I mean, yeah, there was time travel, there was the futuristic aspect, but I know like Alondra Markman is one of the people who came forward, other than me, talking about the fact that it's very much so involved in Satanism. Do you have any memories involving that, or any testimony that can kind of collaborate with our testimony there of that?
Well, um, hmm.
It's okay if
So,
you don't. It's perfectly fine if you don't.
well, some of the other memories that I have, I tried to draw some of it out. Like, okay, my husband and I took the kids to Biltmore Estates. And when I was going through there, I got so flippin' triggered, and I didn't even know what triggering was back then. My kids were, very young at that time. I want to say that was back in 2012, maybe 13. I would have to look for sure, but I was really just going through a full gamut of emotions trying to get through our tours. And the worst part of it was when I was down by the kitchen, and that was where the souvenir shop was. And then, like, you couldn't go past that souvenir shop. It was all blocked off, and it was dark on top of that. And they said, "Oh, you don't need to go down there. That's the kitchen, and you don't need to go down there." But I was just like, I got physically ill. I thought I had food poisoning. It was so bad. But my family had the same thing, so why weren't they sick? And I started having an asthma attack in there. So I was like, I got to get out of here. And I left and went to the gardens in order to feel better. And that was pretty far away from where my family was. I sat underneath. They had an archway of flowers, and I sat on a bench underneath those, and that's where I felt safe. And I was like, what in the world? And that was one of the things that I talked to James about was, that was really weird. What was that all about? And what happened too is I had a nightmare that night, and I drew it out. And what's interesting is when I was drawing the people, one of them kind of reminds me of you, Ark. So this was a pool that they took us to, and it had swastikas around it. These.
Was there no water in the pool, or was there water in the pool?
There was water in the pool. Okay. And there was like, you come out of these doors over here. There was one for the boys, one for the girls, and you were on this like short walkway here, and then you jumped into the pool. And so I'm not that great of an artist, but
it looks like there's the S-bomb everywhere. German S-bomb.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so there was lots of kids in it, and it was in 2008. So that's when I went to that place. So the dream, I looked it all up to write this down. I said, this is from a dream that I had in 2008 after visiting the Biltmore Estates in North Carolina. The entire room was a swimming pool, and there was a ledge on the entrance side from the locker room. Sometimes we were free to swim, but there was a lot of training and exercising, holding our breath and sinking under the water to hide. And, they had the S's in red along the tiles, and then they were outlined in black. And then there were small tiles under that, and the tiles were white and very pristine. And I remembered being in there and being told to go under the water and not come back up. And the longer we stayed, the more praise we got, and the more we got to do for free swimming after that. Or we were told, because they would come and get us from the swimming pool too, and then they would take us to sex parties. But we were told that it was because we were being so good at what we were doing in our training in the pool. So that was...
They would tell you that the sex party is a reward.
A reward, yeah, for doing so good in the pool.
Do you remember any of the hunting parties?
I remember being hunted.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I remember.
So what they do is they hunt you, right? And then they capture you, and then they essay you, and then they kill you, and then they cook you they roast you like a pig, and then they all eat you. And this is like a little party that all these elites like to have. I don't know if it was an altar or not, so I'll be clear on that. But I remember seeing Elon Musk and his mom at one of these parties.
Wow.
Yes. Was it an altar? Can you blame him? Maybe it was some sort of program he's in, and it's not his fault. I always have to take that into account. But something tells me that guy's just a piece of shit. Like, honestly, to be real with you, but I don't know. Who am I to say? All I know is I remember that, and I also the bad part about that memory is I was there as a participant, and I was there surveilling, I guess, Elon or something like that. The memory isn't 100% clear, but I remember that I had to go there and act like it was normal, even though I remembered being hunted there. And believe me, that is a foul energy to have to walk in there and hang out with all those people and drink and laugh with them when you remember being hunted by those same people.
Mm-hmm.
And then the bizarreness of like, are they going to remember my face? Probably not. None of them did. There were certain people that I literally saw there who like hunted me down as a kid, and they didn't remember me. But yeah, it's pretty foul what they do, and not only that, the fact that seeing the face of a kid that they hunted, that's normal because they indoctrinate everybody in their little club and get them to join it, and they do it through fear. Because obviously, if you show any sign of fear, well, then you're gonna get hunted down. So you have to be vicious and be somebody who enjoys torturing people and be a sadistic bastard like them. Otherwise, you don't feel safe. That's the environment that they create, and I want other survivors to understand that you may remember being a sadistic person who did horrible things to people, and what we all need to realize is most of us experience that as a form of self-protection, because if you weren't that kind of person, you would get singled out and you would get abused that much more. So that's the cyclical pattern of these SRA clubs is they try to turn the victims into participants, and they have a very successful turnover rate with that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I do remember having that kind of a dark side to me in order to survive. And it's still hard for me to talk about, but yeah, I remember that. I remember that very well.
Yeah,
Um,
because we weren't just there as children. We grew up and we were there as adults too. And once we became adults, we had to eat bread at their table, if you will. Break bread with these people. If you wanted to be kept safe, my whole thing was I made everybody afraid of me. And other people that remember me will testify that everybody at Montauk was fucking terrified of me. And that was, I mean, it put me in a dark place for a long time, and I'm glad that I got out of it, but it protected me. Being
yeah,
that terrifying, having everybody like ready to like shit their pants at any moment when I'm around, that protected me.
yeah,
And I really want people who also are survivors just to understand is like that wasn't you. That was your trauma response to a situation that you
yes,
didn't decide to be in. You were there against your own will. And
right.
so that's a big part of the healing is realizing like that's not you. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
they literally used mind control programming, used techniques to manipulate us into turning us into evil people because we were light. You can tell that obviously with you, Chastity. You have this beautiful light that you emanate, and obviously that's very desirable to them. They wanted
Mm-hmm.
to take that energy and invert it and make it dark. That's they're kind of their thing. They really get off on that. And so, for those of you out there who have memories of being just this awful, evil person, you need to remember that you are the polar opposite of that, and that's why they chose you in the first place.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard to deal with because most of us are gonna get memories back of I'm not gonna name names, but I had to relay some memories to somebody in this that was a Montauk soldier, some memories back of someone got some really bad memories of this individual doing bad things to this person, and I asked them, should I tell them? And they said, sure, you can if you want, and I did. And this person was in their car at the time when I was telling them this. They had to pull over to the side of the road and start throwing up. That's how bad it was telling them
Mm,
about things that they did, and they remember doing it, and it was so bad to get those memories back that they had to throw up.
yeah.
So that's kind of the stuff we got to deal with, and it's really hard to tell yourself that wasn't me because you remember doing it, you remember enjoying doing it, you remember, but it's like they programmed us to be really sadistic, evil people, and
Right.
that's just the. There's no other way to get around it. That's just what it is. What it is.
Well, one of the things that I think isn't talked about, and this just goes in general for life for people who have been sexually assaulted or raped, our bodies respond because that is how it was made to respond. And, things that we did or that were done to us, we may have enjoyed, or our bodies enjoyed it and responded to it. But that doesn't make us dirty. That doesn't make us that person. That is just our human flesh vehicle doing what it was made to do. And it in no way should shape how you think about sex or just in general about yourself. We need to not live in fear of this. And I used to teach classes, and I'm a homeschooler, so I unschooled my children for most of their lives. And we talked about sex, and I told them, people get so confused when they have had when they've been sodomized or raped, because they think that that makes them who they are going to be later in life or in life at that point. And it doesn't. The shame and the guilt that from your body's normal natural response to that kind of stimulation, it shouldn't cause you to be a certain way. Don't allow that to control you, because you're more than that reaction to that stimulus. And I think it needs to be brought out, and so that the shame and the guilt can be taken away. We are responding normally to something that our bodies are made for. And we need to just take back our sovereignty, and say, give ourselves some grace and love, that we were able to respond in the way that we were able to respond. It saved us, because that's what they wanted. They needed that reaction from us in that situation, so that we didn't get killed, because they wanted power and they wanted control over us. That's why those actions were done against us. And we shouldn't feel guilty about having the normal body reaction
Well,
to
there's
that
also
stimulus.
the mind control aspect of it, where they would make us attached to our captors,
Yeah.
enamored by our abusers, or make us enamored our abusers. They would do things like and also when it comes to a lot of the sexual abuse stuff that they would do uh, with the boys, is they would spray this like purple mist at us on this like pyramid thing, and it'd make us go like it was like mind control. Like it'd make us into like these just monsters basically. And I did all sorts of weird stuff when it came to that. And it was all them, man. It was all them and their mind control and manipulation. And it wasn't me. I know that for sure. I didn't. It wasn't my idea to do all the horrendous shit. Some of those
Right.
memories are the hardest ones to get back. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's terrible, but it needs to be talked about, and especially considering I know it's an uncomfortable subject, but all of us in these programs have healing to do when it comes to that territory, and
Hmm.
we need to realize that we can have like a healthy sex drive and sex life and everything, and that what they did to us or made us do or whatever, it doesn't have to destroy that part of us. And it's like you said, a lot of
Yeah.
times we were just naturally responding to the situation. We didn't have any control. I mean, for God's sakes, we were children. So what does
Yeah.
that say about it?
Right. Yeah.
It's not easy to talk about. It's kind of an awkward
Yeah.
silence right now, but it's just sometimes you
Yeah.
just need to kind of breathe in for a second and take it in, because this is the stuff that we're talking about, people. This isn't fun science fiction stories, and especially for
Right.
us victims that are part of this stuff. There are a lot of really nasty things happening in these programs.
And just
Hmm.
think about the technologies that are being kept from us. These loser farians, they keep using it to torture people and to exert quote unquote power. But meanwhile, we could be using this technology to heal everybody. And
Hmm.
and
Or even
yeah,
just like the portal tech. Like I know, like I can open portals or whatever, but at Montauk, they had a room. I talk about this a lot, and other people remember it too. It was a room on both sides. It was full of portals, those gateways that they kept open, because if you went to the same point over and over again, it'd get harder and unstable, and so they just
Hmm.
would keep them open. And can you imagine if we just had that technology here on Earth, and we just, like it's kind of like what Andrew Basiago talks about. Like, think about how much these technologies, like food insecurity, travel, like all these things could be revolutionized, and we could be living on, like, you know, Brian always says, the Star Trek future. Like it could be like that, and it's really unfortunate that it isn't, but that doesn't mean that it's not coming. It doesn't mean that it won't happen, because we're the ones who are disclosing this stuff, because if the government came forward and did it, they would lie to everybody anyway. We need to start doing it ahead of time and call them out on their bullshit when they try to come out with their bogus narratives and stuff like that, which they do all the time. It's really up to us. And
underground, they have all of these bases, and they use the technology that we talk about needs to be disclosed. They use it down there in order to go to other planets. And you know, that was one of the other things. I remember going on some kind of a shuttle into a portal, and the next thing I was on Mars, and we couldn't talk about anything about Earth, because those people
Earth was
there,
blown up with a cobalt bomb.
yeah,
So you're telling people.
yeah. And there was that big brain drain or something like that, where all the smart people were taken up there to Mars to colonize and start over there because the Earth was gone. And I remember that. I just remember like walking. I didn't talk very much. We just listened. They like gave us a tour. I don't really know why I was there. I remember people looking at me like, why am I there? I was with a group of people. I don't recognize any of them. Like in this lifetime, I don't know who they were. But we were taken there for whatever reason. I went on a tour, and I remember sitting in the lunchroom and everything, eating with these people, and they all dressed the same. Everything was pretty much gray, as far as what they wore, to work anyways. I don't remember going out onto the surface or even seeing the surface. Everything was very artificial, and
they don't have grocery stores. That's one thing.
No, it was contained. It was a contained society. That's all I can say about it. So that's, you were asking me, do I remember going to other places? So I remember that. You know, I remember being on the carrier, and just floating around. I don't even know where we were necessarily at. I'm assuming that we were around Earth, but I honestly, I don't know. So those are some of the things that I remember. Other than, you know, I have a memory of an earlier lifetime, that when I was first here as a child of a Pleiadian and a Lyran, and they came and took everybody away in a spaceship in a clearing in the forest. They took everybody away, but left me and a few others here. And I had that come to me when I was a child, and that was back when I didn't even have TV, so there's no reason that I should have even known what a UFO was. And I remember thinking, I woke up and I told my mom, I said, we missed the rapture. They already came and got everybody. We're in hell. And she's like, what? So you know, I have those kind of memories. But yeah, it's really strange to try and put all of this together, but it's getting it, since I went to the Montauk adventure in August and met you guys, and I'm starting to have more luck at that. And what I'm working on, my therapist, you know, she told me, she said, you know, you're having very visceral reactions as you're telling me these things. You know, I'm shaking, I'm crying, snotting, and I'm just like, I can't do this. And she's like, you don't have to regress and relive it. Just let's deal with the emotions and let it go. Let's feel these and forgive. And we're not going to forget, but we're going to forgive and move forward, because that's what we want. We need healing so we can move forward. And that's why I love this egg thing that I've been doing, is I feel like it's helping me, because it's a resonance.
I love this egg thing I've been doing. It just sounds funny. Well, but yeah, no, it sounds like it's doing great things for you. It does.
Yeah, it's funny because it reminds me of, you know, when Jesus said you have to be born again. I was like, maybe he was talking about the egg.
Yeah, could be, man. You know,
yeah,
could be.
So
Gotta get born again in an egg. It makes
yeah,
sense. You know, chickens are born in eggs.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I really like your like what you said about how you used the scripture like is like a kind of like a roadmap to start out with, and then you figured out more as you go along.
Hmm.
And I think that's a really good way to just like point it out. Like with a lot of this like stuff, like a lot of obviously a lot of people in this community are going to talk about how there's religious programming, and of course that's 100% true. But at the
Hmm.
same time, there's a lot of like truth and a lot of spiritual messages, like in and what a lot of these what I call ascended masters, what they're trying to teach humanity. And I think what people need to remember is you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak.
Right.
You take the good that you can, you take the messages that resonate with you,
Hmm.
and you try to learn from all these different great teachers who walked the earth with humanity and tried to show us great things. I think that's really what people need to do, and I think that it's one of those things where it's a complicated situation with these SSP programs because religious doctrine and stuff like that, it does apply, but
Hmm.
also sometimes it convolutes things. Like you're talking about how earlier when you're young and you first were getting taken, you thought all the aliens were angels. That would be an example of the religious lens. Sometimes it convolutes people things and people can't see past it. And like what I try to make people realize is it is all connected,
Yeah.
and you just have to use your own discernment, your gut feeling, because that is a really powerful thing. Like
Hmm.
your own discernment, and you just have to trust your gut, and that's gonna help you on the path to truth more than anything else, I think. And
Yeah.
yeah, I would just like to. I'm just kind of curious, like, what your advice is to people who are experiencing that, waking up, realizing the programming, but also like, maybe they shouldn't fully abandon like some things that they've learned. Like, what's your opinion on that?
Well, what happened to me was I was actually in church. I was worshiping, and I heard, "Put your hands down." And I'm like, "What?" I heard, "Put your hands down. I don't want your worship. I came to show you the way." I was like, "Oh, okay." And I felt that Jesus was actually telling me, "Don't worship me. I came to show you how to get through this life so that you could do better than me." You know, um, and I was
Yeah,
like,
I would think that's a big misconception with a lot of uh religion is I think it's the nefarious entities that want to be worshipped.
mm-hmm,
God just wants to be like respected. He doesn't
yeah,
want to be disrespected.
right,
Positive energy entities, they don't want to be disrespected. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
But they don't need to be worshipped. Needing to be worshipped is a very like kind of like a narcissistic trait,
mm-hmm,
and I think that is not the true God if they're asking to
right,
be worshipped. And there's a lot of convolution with that. Like I know that like Yahweh said they're the true God. And my
mm-hmm,
personal belief, I wish Brian could be here with this because I know he has his 2 cents on this too, probably. But my personal belief is that Yahweh was like a Shah Hamid being, like an alien, and they were not the true God. And it all gets really confusing because there is a true God, there is a true source creator. Christ did walk the earth. A lot of ascended masters walked the earth and tried to teach us things. And I think that's exactly what you said. It's not about them being worshipped and us being lowly worms that are sinners that can't get out of the grub on the ground mode that we're in. It's about the fact that we are just as pure and holy and full of light and full of
mm-hmm,
God's source energy as Christ was. And I
yeah,
think that's really important for people to understand is like we
mm-hmm,
are source creator, we are God, we're
yeah,
acting as gods. The only thing in that is you need to respect God's creation. And I
mm-hmm,
think that with like the Montauk project, like a big problem with that project is we did not respect God's creation. There was a
mm-hmm,
source timeline, a
mm-hmm,
God timeline that was fine, everything
right,
worked, the earth was in a good place, things were a lot better off. And these negative groups decided that they're going to go against the source timeline, the God timeline, and
mm-hmm,
that's where a lot of our problems come from. And that's why when a lot of people are like, I can't understand why a God would do this to their people, like why would a God let people suffer like this? The reality is that God doesn't want us to suffer like this. In a way, he allowed it to happen because he gave us free will. But
mm-hmm,
it's like if he didn't do that, if God didn't give us free will, then right now we'd be bitching about how we don't have free will, right? And how, you know what I'm saying? And so we used our own free will and did the whole thing where like you put the thing in your spoke in your bike and then you flip over and you're like, why'd God do that? It's that kind of thing, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
We're the ones who messed up the timelines, got things all off balance, and made it so life in general sucks for the average human being.
Mhm.
I don't mean to be that polarizing. I guess not everybody lives horrible lives, but they could be a lot better. And yeah, I just think that it's I think everyone kind of gets the point I'm trying to make. Like,
Well, yeah. Okay, so couple things that popped out at me. Okay, well, first I studied out because after I was told to stop worshiping, I was like, oh wow. I started looking closer at the scriptures, and I was like, you know, Yahweh doesn't seem much like Jesus. Yahweh, and I was his children's director. I taught Sunday school and ended up being a director, did my own curriculum, had my own building. I did that from the age of 12 in this lifetime, on this timeline. And when my 3-year-olds are asking me, why did God say to kill the mommies, the babies, and the animals? What did they do? Why did they have to be killed? And I have no answer. I'm sitting here going, I don't know. That is weird. Oh my God, that's another Holocaust. And I was like, something's not right here. This Yahweh person doesn't seem very cool. He's not very loving. He's wanting to just kill everybody because they're a certain race. And yeah, we sit and teach that Hitler did that, and he's so bad. Why are we
yeah, and
worshiping Yahweh?
I have memories. They're confusing, and I've gone into them a few times. But I have memories of like interacting with some of those beings, like Yahweh and Uriel and stuff like that. And from what I recall, human beings are slaves, and the best way to get them to do what you want them to do is present yourself as their God.
Yeah.
And that's what Yahweh did. And the reason why I said he was the one true God is because he wanted to take slaves from other entities, including myself. It's a really long story, but the Ra, us people, it's normal to have human slaves, dude. Like 80% of the alien races out there use humans for their labor and stuff. Like it's messed up. That's what we're trying to change here, I guess, with talking. But yeah, and yeah, I remember that I went to Yahweh to say like, because I freed my humans because I believe this is kind of complicated. I guess I'll just go and do it because people are probably wondering now. I freed my slaves because I believe they had sovereignty, is what I remember, or something like that. And I came back, and they were like working for somebody else and building some sort of like structure. And I was like, what are you doing? You guys can do whatever you want now. You're free. And they're just like, oh, no, you weren't the true God. Yahweh was. And I was like, what? Yeah, huh? So I like contacted like Yahweh, like indirectly. I didn't actually communicate with him. But the answer that I got was, oh, well, you're not, you know, you gave up your slaves. You weren't using them anymore. So we took them. So I went to Uriel to complain about that. And I was just like, what the hell, you guys? Like, we gave up our slaves not so they could continue to be slaves, because we believe they're kind of our children and kind of our responsibility. And even though it's like kind of dangerous, we believe we should just let them be and do whatever they want. That's what we believe. And you're disrespecting that. And they're like, Uriel was like, are you questioning the decision of the Grand Council, like the decisions of our council? And I'm like, no, I'm not questioning your decision. I'm questioning your honor. It seems like you don't have any honor. And he literally threw like a trident at me and killed me just for saying that. Like, and my memory goes dry there. But yeah, I remember interacting with some of those beings, and they were not friendly. No, they could appear very ethereal and angelic and send you love, light energy, and be really rad. If they liked you, if they're trying to manipulate you, maybe, right? But if you got them mad or crossed them in any way, even if it was unintentional, watch out, man. They're very vengeful beings.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's just my testimony. That's what I remember. I'm not asking anyone to believe me. I'm kind of curious if anybody else remembers any of this stuff, because I know I was the only person there. But yeah, I figured it was worth mentioning since we were talking about Yahweh.
Yeah, well, and also in what I was studying out, I saw a very close similarity that Yahweh was probably Marduk.
And I talk about Marduk a lot, and I do not like that guy. Marduk, I think that would make sense because basically what ended up happening is we formed a rift between each other. We at one point got along, we were friends, and then he felt disrespected by me, and then he made a soul contract with me where I was a slave. And so when I was at Montauk, they were renting me from Marduk. He considered my soul as property, and man, was that guy. He still is out there somewhere. He is a fucking asshole, like on a whole nother level. Like that guy is one fucking piece of shit. Like, so what's the word for it? Just never gets over anything. You know what I mean? Like, so holds a grudge so deeply, even over the smallest shit. And
chauvinistic.
I could do a whole interview about that guy, about Marduk. I really could. I could do a whole episode on him because I worked for him in a time bubble in England at Stainborough Castle, if anybody wants to look into that. I'm sorry for talking so much during the interview. It's just our testimony and what we talk about. It collaborates with each other, and I like to bring up my little tidbits of information that go along with yours.
No, it's great. So the other thing that I wanted to say is like, so Jesus showing us the way, his name was not Christ. His name was Jesus. And he was a Christed being. Christ is actually his consciousness that he attained while he worked through and did. And he came to a certain level of understanding and perspective and objective where he had they actually said that in the ancient days that people's heads would glow. So that's why they gave them auras or halos. And so they called them Christed beings, and they earned the title of Christ. So there was more than one Christ in history. We call them masters, I think now, or the ascended masters.
Ascended masters, yeah.
Yeah. And so the other thing is that, Jesus said that he was going to go to the right hand of the Father so that we could do greater things. And that was because he showed us the way that we needed to start out and go, but they took a lot of that out of the Bible, because they took all of the mysticism out because we were not smart enough to understand it. They dumbed it down and canonized it and said you can't know anything else. And so there's that aspect. And so what I want to say that's most important is in Revelations, it talks about how we are saved by our testimony. And so I think it's really important now that we are actually all getting platforms in order to share our testimonies, because it is by us sharing our testimonies that we bring healing to each other. We bring confirmation to each other, because their main thing that they wanted to keep us controlled with is, oh, you're crazy. Everybody's going to think you're crazy.
Yeah, and so that's what I want people to understand. Like, I've had certain people, like, I'm not going to name names, but I've had certain people tell me, like, you're not focusing on healing enough, and you're just telling your story and reliving your trauma, blah, 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 blah. And, like, I'm sorry, but fuck you. This is important. We need to talk about this shit. Like, this is the true history of humanity, and people don't know about it, and you want me to not talk about it because it's not important enough? Go fuck yourself. Like, we need to talk about this stuff. Like, people should know what the fuck Solar Warden is. Sorry for the swearing, but I get worked up. People should know what Nakwafen is. People should know what happened at Montauk. Yes, 30,000 children at least died. That's not fun information. I'm sorry that my testimony isn't enough love and light for some of these people, but it's like, what gives? I can't water myself down and make my testimony more bright and cheery to, you know what I mean, to appease to people. I can't do that. And not only that, like, it's important that we share a testimony, and it's important that we show these stories. We are like veterans sharing stories of war, if not only to heal for ourselves and just to remember that we lived through that and just kind of go through the trauma and heal that, for others to understand this is what happened. We're not just telling stories. This is testimony. This is human history that is being nefariously hidden from humanity. And it's time to wake the fuck up and realize what's happening. And yes, by us all collaborating, We make this real. We put it in reality. So no, it's not about forming little clubs and little tables that we all sit at and little narratives that we all cling to. It's about figuring out what we all have in common, sifting through the bullshit and the screen memories and everything else, so that instead of a conference circuit, we can have a movement that's taking down the cabal, suing organizations that are doing nefarious things, making sure that it's white hats that are running the military and not these satanic forces, like stuff like that. Like, that is our responsibility. Like, it's not going to just happen overnight. It takes us coming forward and talking about this stuff, and it takes real work on the ground, like physical, like action. And this is just the very beginning of that. And that's what people need to get on board with. This is not a conference circuit. This is healing. And this is an activist movement. We are all activists, whether we like it or not. That is what we are. We aren't just public speakers. We are activists. Yeah. And I think once our collective, whatever you want to call us, the SSB whistleblowers, when we start focusing on that, more than selling books and who gets to talk at the most conferences and stuff and collaborating, I think that's when we'll make a real change. And I'm not trying to, I think the conferences are important. I'm not trying to talk crap. Like, I love the Journey to Truth conference. I think it's great. Like, but it's just, there's more work to be done than just the conferences themselves. We need to bring it past that. That's all I'm saying. The conferences are great because we're able to meet in person and heal and talk and network and everything else. It's hugely important. I'm not trying to cut down on the awesome work that people are doing and act like it doesn't matter. It does. But I'm just saying, we need to think bigger and move past, just telling our stories. And how are we going to get normal people on board with us? There is evidence. We need to start compiling it. I don't know.
That's what we're doing. We're bringing evidence. We're validating. We're putting our testimony to record. And, through this, we are being our own saviors. That's what we are. Nobody's going to come and save us. We've learned that. We are survivors. We know nobody's going to save us but ourselves. And so this is the way to do that, is through our testimony. And this is how we get justice. Because one of these days, these testimonies are going to be taken before a galactic court, and there will be justice.
Mm-hmm. I think Earth courts too, regular old run-of-the-mill Earth courts,
well, and common law courts are going to be reestablished one of these days, and they will use these as testimonies, because we don't know how long we have. Nobody's promised tomorrow, so we don't know when somebody's going to be taken away from us, and if we don't get their stories, then it's lost.
Yeah, I think about that all the time. I could die tomorrow, and I've got all these videos on the internet. They're always going to be there. You know what I mean? Even if they try to scrub them, there's probably people out there who save them to make sure that, you know what I mean? You can't ever get rid of these people. Isaac Cappy, they tried to wipe him off the internet, and people had his videos saved and stuff. So it's yeah, it's there's a lot of pain and trauma we got to heal through, and there's still scary stuff happening, but it's a good time for us. Now, my main thing is I've seen a lot of stuff. I'm not going to name names, but there's a conference that recently happened, and James Rink is not saying good things. And there's a lot of people that are not getting along. And I do my best to not take sides in those scenarios. And my piece of advice to everybody involved in these situations is, what does the cabal want? Do they want us fighting, creating little clubs that don't get along with each other, start banning people from conferences that we don't agree with? Or do we want something where even if we disagree with each other on a few things, can't we all agree on the really important stuff and make sure that, because otherwise we do look like a bunch of lunatics talking on the internet, right? Until we all agree and form a really cohesive group that isn't a bunch of different smaller groups, we are screwed. The disclosure movement isn't going to get anywhere.
Well,
and that's
what
a huge problem I'm seeing right now.
What they did to us is they traumatized us at the high school age of maturity, and that's what we see playing out here. And part of healing is maturing, and part of healing is being able to look at things from a higher perspective. When you get healed to a certain point of forgiveness for yourself, because you have to start here. You can forgive everybody all you want to and say this and that, I forgive you, blah, 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 we're all good. But if you don't forget this or forgive this person right here, then you're still going to be stuck. And so you when you forgive yourself and you start walking out and trying to look at a different perspective that's higher, like realizing that, oh, this person over here is reacting this way because they still have this maturity level because of this trauma that was done to them, and we need to give them some grace. But if they don't do that work, they're not ever going to grow beyond that, and it's just going to keep going in this vicious cycle.
Also, we need to. There's a lot of situations I see, and just out of like being professional and everything else, I'm not going to bring up any exact situations, but there's a lot of situations that I see, or at least a few of them, in where there's some of these divides in the community, people not getting along, where both sides are kind of simultaneously right about each other. Like they're kind of calling both sides out on the things they do that are maybe not cool, and I think that like people just need to like really humble themselves and admit when they're wrong more. And I really do think that this is a situation where I've had people say, I'm not out here to make friends. I'm here to tell my story. And it's like, okay, well, if you're not here to make friends, then this movement isn't going to get very far. If you don't care about how many enemies you make in this community, that's a bad trait to have. You should care, and you should
That's not very healing.
Yeah, so I like I said, I'm not trying to take sides. I do personally think the narrative that is being put out there that says that the negative ETs are gone and it's all good now is a psyop. I'm not trying to crap on anybody saying that. I just know it's true. Like I know from what I experienced. Like if we really were at a point where all it was just all good and all the negative ETs were gone, everybody would know. There wouldn't be any question in anyone's mind. Like the truth would have come out. You know what I mean? They hide this stuff because there's bad things going on, not because it's good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I took a couple of college courses in the fall last year because I wanted to I have a bucket list of things that I want to accomplish. And so I took a couple of classes, and I took macroeconomics and I took biology and microbiology. And I was like, this economics is the study of, it's the science of scarcity. And it was like reading and being taught the manual for how they control us, because it's through scarcity, the fear
Artificial
of lack.
Scarcity.
Yeah.
And we have plenty of everything we need, and here we are being manipulated and brainwashed into thinking that there's only so much and there's only so much room and overpopulation and this and that. Like, it's sad.
So I think that, if we can take away all of these hyper reactions that we have to things that happen around us, it's called shadow work. We are being shown through the reflections of that others are giving to us, because they're holding our mirrors for us to see ourselves. And as long as we're in this reaction to what we're seeing, we're not healing. But if we can step back and actually take a look at what's being shown to us, that's when the healing starts. And it takes a certain maturity to be able to face that shadow. And that's where we're at right now, because, in order for us to go to these higher frequencies and vibrations and this ascension process and the shifting of the consciousness as a whole, we have to start looking at things from a different perspective instead of constantly reacting out of trauma. And in order to get through that reacting immaturity that we have to be able to say, oh yeah, dude, I did something that I shouldn't have done, or I said something, or I misunderstood. I am so sorry. Own it. Take responsibility, own it, and let's get on with this. We got bigger things to take care of and do. And, taking a higher perspective is what's going to get us there together.
Right. That's 100% it. Like, and I just want to thank like everybody in this community who does their best to not take sides and let people make up their own minds and stuff. I could name names, but I guess I won't. just because I don't want to look like I'm taking sides in the weird little tiffs that are going on. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just think we all need to be on the same page as much as possible. And the more we're on the same page, the better off this disclosure movement is going to be.
And not taking sides. We named James earlier. He got named in one of these little tiffs, and we've got his back. We love James, and
yeah, I love James, but
I'm very
also
grateful to
maybe
him.
he's done some things that upset people. Maybe they're right to be upset. That doesn't mean that he doesn't belong. I believe he deserves a spot at the table. He's done a lot of work. That doesn't mean he's perfect. I'm not going to take sides in that situation. I'm not like.
Yeah, I refuse to
I'm
take
just going to
sides
say that
too.
I support James and his work still.
Yeah,
I haven't turned my back on him.
and I don't criticize him. I don't think he did anything wrong.
Yeah, I'm
That's
not.
my take.
Yeah,
so.
I'm not turning my back on James.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to take sides either and say that he's some great guy that never does anything wrong. I don't know. I wasn't there.
But he's a great guy
Yeah.
from what I know.
Yeah, from what I know too, he's a great dude. So that's what I'm
Right.
gonna go with. But
Yeah, I choose love.
yeah, I love James, and some of these people are not too happy with him. I love him too. Love them too. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, I'm not gonna, like I said, I don't want to take sides in that situation.
Yeah,
All I can say is like I'm not gonna turn my back on James and not support him because it's whatever is going on.
We're here for the
Right.
movement.
Yeah, we're here for the
we're
movement.
here
and
for the
he's
movement.
definitely
We're here
carrying
to
the
help
torch.
it.
He's
Yeah.
been carrying the torch for 12 years. So I'm gonna give him a little respect for that.
Some respect.
Yeah. But like I said, I'm not trying to take sides. You know, it's sounds like I am maybe, but I'm not. Like anybody who's mad at James, like or whatever's going on, I'm more than happy to be friends with you still. I'm not taking sides. I wish that you all could get along. There are people that I know James was friends with that he's not gonna. I don't want to talk about it. It's just I wish everybody could just love each other and work
I
on
don't
this
know most
disclosure
of the
movement
people
together.
involved, so I'm
Yeah.
I'm neutral. I choose love. I
Yeah,
want everybody
I'll
to be
admit I
good.
was like defending James in the comment section because he's like my bro and I love him. But like after like 3 days I've sat on it, I was like, well, I wasn't actually there. I'm still gonna stick up for James a little
Right.
bit, but I wasn't there, so I
We
kind of
shouldn't be made to take sides.
yeah, we
You know?
shouldn't. We shouldn't. I think that's dumb. And you know, I don't want to end on a sour note like
Yeah.
that. So is there anything positive you want to say to us, to our viewers before we go? Anything cool you want to talk about briefly? Because we're at the 2 hours and 6 minutes mark. So we've gotten a lot of content. Yeah.
Well,
It's been a
something
great
that I
interview.
thought was funny. We were talking before when you were talking about things. Before I started this, I went through my sayings here, and I chose this one to sit in front of me, and I thought this would be funny to read. It says, "I believe in the power of positive bitching."
There you go. Full disclosure now.
Full disclosure now, positive bitching. I like that. Well, I just want to thank you again for coming on the show. This was an excellent interview. You provided so much great, just like testimony, and I think it's exactly what I thought. You're a healer, and you have a very positive energy, and you very much so have transmuted a lot of pain into a whole lot of healing and love. And I think that's really important. And I think it's important to be realistic about it too, because like it's not all just like sunshine and rainbows. You have to work through your trauma. You have to work through you have to do shadow work.
Shadow
And
work,
I think
yeah.
you're a perfect representation of that duality of somebody who's come on the other side, who's a warrior, but you also didn't let it make you like take away your softness from you. I think that's really important, that to still have that nurturing aspect. You know what I mean? You really
Yeah.
have that, and I really appreciate your energy. It was lovely having you at the Montauk reunion tour. It definitely made the vibes a lot higher. And also to people who are curious, Chastity does like energy work, Reiki healing, and you did some healing for me when we were at Montauk, and it was so powerful. You didn't ask for any money, but I pulled out my wallet and I gave you some because I really felt the tangible difference. And I think that exchange of energy just it's a respect thing. So and yeah, I just so people who are interested, Chastity does energy work. She's one of the many Montauk warriors who went down the path of healing and came out the other side as a healer, which is powerful. I mean, there's so many Montauk people who that's what they do now. They focus on healing, and I think that shows that we're not these terrible monsters that they tried to make us out to be. If that were true, why are like 9 out of 10 of us healers now and like trying to do positive things? So I just think that, yeah, you just have an amazing, powerful testimony. And like I said, transmuting that darkness into light, like that's such a a powerful theme that we all need to concentrate on as much as possible and really nurture, because that's how we get to the other side of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Chastity.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
I guess
you.
we're gonna end the recording.
Yep.
And thank you to all the viewers for watching. We really appreciate you. Have a wonderful day, evening, whatever time it is when you're watching this. Take care.